The cameras were ready. The lights were on. Martell walked in with that familiar mix of confidence and determination. The kind that says, "I'm about to prove everyone wrong." But then, just when it seemed like his comeback was finally within reach, it was over. Not with a slow fade, but with a hard stop. OWN Network made their move swift, decisive, and impossible to ignore. And while Martell was left stunned, someone else felt the aftershocks just as deeply. Arrion Curry. Her reaction, shaken to the core. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. In Martell's mind, this was the moment to rewrite his story, to step back into the spotlight and show that he could rise above the whispers, the drama, the past mistakes. He had rehearsed the pitch, planned the image, and built up this quiet momentum. Every detail had been positioned for a big reveal. But behind the scenes, OWN was weighing more than just Martell's potential. They were looking at history, optics, and the message it would send to the audience that has been watching this saga unfold for years. The meeting that changed everything didn't drag on for hours. It was sharp, efficient, and to the point. Martell made his case. He spoke about growth, about second chances, about bringing a new version of himself to the viewers. But the response he got was not the one he had been hoping for. OWN decided that the risk was too high, the timing too wrong. And in that moment, the comeback narrative he had been carefully piecing together crumbled. For Martell, it was more than a professional setback. This was personal. He had tied so much of his self-image to this return, to proving not just to the world but to himself that he could reclaim his place. And now, with one decision, that door closed. But if you think that's where the story ends, you're wrong, because the ripple effect was about to hit Arrion, and hard. Arrion has always been a lightning rod in this whole Huntsville saga. Her name stirs up opinions, her presence stirs up tension. And whether she admits it or not, Martell's public wins have a way of lifting her tottering credibility. Protection, even a little shared spotlight. So when the network's decision came down, it didn't just dim Martell's light. It cast a long shadow over Arrion's position. Those close enough to see her reaction described it as a mix of disbelief and dread. She knew this would mean more whispers, more side eyes, more people saying the two of them were a package deal in all the wrong ways. It wasn't just about the network saying no. To Martell, it was about what that no implied about the world they both live in. In the days that followed, Martell kept a tight lid on his emotions in public, but privately, he replayed every moment of that meeting in his head. Was it something he said? Something they'd already decided before he even walked in? Or was it the lingering weight of past headlines that made it impossible for them to see the new him without seeing the old one? Those questions gnawed at him. Arrion, on the other hand, found herself in an uncomfortable spotlight she didn't ask for. People were connecting dots, assuming that her ongoing connection to Martell had played a role in the network's hesitance. It's the kind of speculation that can shake even the most confident person, because once those assumptions start circulating, they take on a life of their own. And here's the twist. While this was a clear professional blow for Martell, it may also have been a moment of unintended clarity. OWN's decision forced him to confront just how much his personal entanglements, public image, and reputation were still intertwined. It was a reality check that hit harder than he expected. Meanwhile, Arrion's world felt smaller. Friends she thought were allies started to keep their distance. Conversations shifted tone when she walked into a room. It wasn't that people were overtly cruel, it was that subtle, quiet kind of judgment that speaks volumes without saying a word. And that's the kind of thing that shakes you, no matter how thick you think your skin is. What makes this situation so charged is the history leading up to it. Martell's journey has been filled with peaks and valleys, with moments of charm and moments of chaos. Every comeback attempt is measured against the mistakes of the past, and every misstep is magnified. OWN's decision wasn't just about whether Martell could carry a storyline, it was about whether the audience would accept him in a new light. And right now, they weren't willing to gamble. Arrion's shakeup came from realizing that, like it or not, her name is tethered to his wins can elevate her, but his losses, they can drag her down too. And this time, the fall was steep, but here's the question no one can answer yet. Is this truly the end of Martell's comeback dream, or just a detour? He's not the type to quietly fade away. If anything, this might ignite something in him, determination to rebuild in a way that doesn't require anyone else's green light. For Arrion, the challenge will be deciding whether to stand by his side publicly or create more distance, knowing that the public's perception of them together could be a roadblock she can't afford. That's a decision that could redefine both of their futures. The irony in all this is that both Martell and Arrion have weathered storms before, storms that, by all logic, should have ended their relevance in the public eye. Yet here they are, still commanding attention, still sparking conversation. That kind of resilience is rare. But resilience doesn't erase consequences, and right now, the consequences are front and center. OWN's shutdown of Martell's comeback wasn't just a business move. It was a statement. And whether intentional or not, that statement reverberated far beyond the meeting room. It sent a clear message to both Martell and Arrion about the power of perception, the cost of reputation, and the reality that some bridges, once burned, aren't rebuilt overnight. The most fascinating part: the story's not over. This is one of those moments that sets the stage for the next act, the rebuilding, the retaliation, or maybe even the reinvention. But in the space between now and then, the uncertainty will be its own kind of pressure. Imagine being Martell right now, trying to figure out your next move while the world watches to see if you stumble again. Imagine being Arrion, knowing that even when you're not the one in the spotlight still finds you through someone else's shadow. Whispered at first, but quickly gaining volume. Why did the network make this call? What happened behind closed doors? What was said in those conversations that took a man so certain of his return and left him standing on the outside looking in? And as speculation spilled out into the public, the image of Martell as the man in control began to crack, replaced instead with the sight of someone watching opportunities slip away just beyond reach. And maybe the hardest part wasn't even the professional hit, but the way it exposed the truth about where he really stood in the eyes of those who held the power to shape his story. Because no matter how confident his tone, no matter how tightly he gripped the remnants of his plan, you could see the shift in his expression, that fleeting flicker of realization that the stage he once commanded now belonged to someone else. And as for Arrion, that's enough to shake anyone. And that's where we leave it tonight, with the door closed. The impact was different, but no less intense. Because in the space of a single decision, the storyline she thought she knew had been turned upside down, leaving her not in the glow of returning relevance, but in the shadow of a man whose momentum had been stopped cold. And in that shadow she had to reckon with the possibility that maybe this wasn't just a temporary setback. Maybe the door wasn't just closed for now but locked for good, and that thought was enough to shake even her carefully composed exterior. Because for years their names had been tied together in a complicated knot of public drama and private loyalty. Whispered at first but quickly gaining volume. Why did the network make this call? Stakes higher than ever, and two people standing at a crossroads that could define the rest of their public lives. Will Martell find another way to stage his comeback? Will Arrion steady herself or step away? Or will this shared setback become the fire that pushes them toward a reinvention neither of them saw coming? One thing's for sure, the answer is coming, and when it does, it's going to change everything. So what do you think? Was OWN right to shut down Martell's comeback, or did they miss an opportunity to showcase real growth? And what does this mean for Arrion's place in all of it? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is just getting started. And if you want to be here when the next chapter unfolds, when the twists hit, when the shade flies, when the truth comes out, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, the story's far from over.